Hey, everybody, welcome to View from the Top podcast, where we help family first business owners and entrepreneurs get through the valleys and up the mountain to their very own view from the top. We're so glad you're listening in today. My name is Kevin, also known as Wally, and I've got Big A in the house. Big A, how's it going today, man?
Wally, I'm excited. I've got my internet back on. I was without internet for a few days, and man, I was getting really uptight about that. But today it's on and up
It's
and running.
on.
Doing good. Doing
Isn't
good.
that crazy when that happens, though? I
Oh
mean,
my gosh, it
did
shut
you
my
get
whole world down.
frustrated?
It shut my
Did you
whole
get
world down.
frustrated?
Yeah, I got frustrated. Are you kidding? I couldn't do anything. I was like handicapped. Robin goes, okay, like calm down. It's going to be okay. You're going to get your little internet back up. And I was like, hey, by the way, cable's down too. You can't watch TV. And she's like, now she's upset. Now she's excited.
That's funny.
And so we got it up and go. My mom was upset too. She lives here. She's got a little cottage off to the side, and we're all fed by the same internet. My mom's like 88 years old. She's going, I can't get on my iPad. And I'm like, today'd be a good day to clean the house, maybe, Mom. I don't know. And so for 2 days, we all got to clean the house and do chores. And so it was good.
Yeah, that's good though. That could be frustrating though, man. How'd you handle that?
Let me tell
Like,
you
I
what
mean,
I did though. Like after I raised Cain, right? I called up AT&T and said, "Listen, I've got to have it. I work from home. That's where my office is at." And they sent a guy out here the next morning, and man, he took charge. Like this guy was on it, and I was going out to really rip this guy. To be honest with you, I'm embarrassed to admit that, but it's the truth. I was like so frustrated. 2 days, no internet. I go out, and this guy says, "Hey, Mr. Walker, how you doing today?" It's real polite, and it kind of diffused the situation a little bit. Well, we started talking, and he lives here locally, and we had some common acquaintances. And one of our members, Brett Barnhart, that's in ISI, his wife is Crystal. Crystal was from a little town outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma. That's where he's from. They went to the same school together. And I'm like, what are
wow.
the chances of that? And it turned into like, I forgot about the internet. It turned into a conversation. And he said, Mr. Walker, let me tell you, here's my personal cell number. He said, in the future, rather than going through all the normal channels, but go ahead and go through the normal channels, but then give me a call. And he said, man, we'll get you up and going. And I was like, nobody has ever done that from AT&T, nobody. And so I came back, Kevin, and I started thinking about it. And I was so impressed with his behavior. I found out who his boss was and texted him, and I said, "Hey, man, who's your direct report?" And he gave me his phone number. He thought he was in trouble. I guess he
He's
gave me
shaking
his.
in his boots, man.
Yeah,
I bet
he
he was
did. He
shaking in
did.
his
I'm
boots.
sure he was upset, But anyway, got his email and got his phone number. And I sat here at my desk, and I thought about that guy, and I did a 2-minute video telling his boss, you need more employees like this. And I recounted everything that we had gone through. And then I told him how this gentleman had handled it and he diffused the situation. We had common, relationships. And we talked, and I said, I've never been as impressed with a young man in my life as it is with this employee. Well, man, you would have thought that I'd given that guy $1,000. I mean, I immediately get a text message back thanking me. He said, no one in my career has ever sent a video thanking me for one of my employees. He said, I get all the complaints, but nobody has ever done that. Well, the young man texted me back. He said, Mr. Walker, he said, I've been working there for years. I've never had a compliment like this in my entire life. He said, I want to thank you for reaching out. And so, yeah, we took a bad thing, made a good thing out of it.
That's really what'd that take? You said 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
Some thought? 2 minutes?
Yeah.
I mean, that's so you don't know this, but you inspired me a little bit. So I've done things like that in the past as well. But one of the things that's different about that I've done in the past, but hearing that story, you were telling me this story just last week, and I was like, man. And so my wife and I have had a lot of people in town. I shouldn't say a lot of people. We've had my parents and then brother and sister in law, and they've come into town over the past couple weeks. So we've had people staying with us for 2 weeks, and so we're taking them out in the town, doing things, having a good time. And we go to this place downtown Nashville called Legendary. It's a milkshake bar. They create these crazy milkshakes for outrageous prices. We actually don't ever buy the milkshakes because they actually serve ice cream just in a little cup. We love their ice cream. So we stop in there and it's busy. So we find this table that the only one that was, I mean, there was two available. One was really dirty, hadn't been picked up yet. The other one had a couple of cups on it from the previous people. So we just kind of pushed those to the side, and we sat down there at a table for four. And they give you a number, and so somebody starts. One of the servers starts bringing out the ice cream, and he comes out and he sets down the ice cream, and he turns around to walk away. I said, sir, I said, would you mind taking these cups for us? You couldn't throw them away because they were glass, right? They're glass jars. They put the ice cream in, and he goes, well, he said, that's not my job. There's another guy walking around here that does that. And I'm thinking, what in the world? So that right away, I'm like, kind of like, really? Are you kidding me? So then I'm really paying attention, and I'm watching this other young man push this cart around, and he's just diligently picking up people's food that they've left behind and the stuff that they've been served with, right? And it's messy and nasty. Of course, it's ice cream and candy stuff. He's cleaning it all up. And he came by and picked ours up, and I thanked him. And then toward the end, I went up to use the restroom before we were ready to go, and he was cleaning at a table a few away. And on my way to the restroom, I kind of did a little bit of a detour and went around. And I said, I didn't ask him his name, and I wish I had, but I said, hey, I said, I just want you to know that I really appreciate you cleaning this stuff up. I said, I know it's dirty, it's nasty, and I wouldn't want to do it, but I appreciate the fact that you do it, and you do a really good job. And the look on his face
Yeah.
was like, he didn't know what to say.
Yeah. Nobody
He's like,
ever
he's like,
does that.
well, thank you.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
I was like, gosh, like, isn't
Mm.
that it's now I've had a lot like talking about these successes, right? And doing these little wins is great. I've had a lot of misses too, and I know you
Yeah.
have too, right? Missed opportunities. But
Sure.
I think if we just all take a little bit of time
Yeah. Yeah.
and think about other people when we're out and about living our
Yeah.
lives, doing things,
Yeah.
man, what a difference that must have made in those people's day.
Mm. Kevin, the difference is that we need to train ourselves to look for the opportunity, not look to
Mm,
complain about what's not going well, but look for opportunities to serve and to help. And I miss them too. I'm not saying I don't miss them, but you got to
yeah.
be prepared, even for opportunities. There, for a long time, I carried around a little packet of ones and $5 bills. And I was always looking for an opportunity to tip guys like that or ladies like that or people, custodians that are cleaning up or the bus boys or the waitress, whatever you can do, look for an opportunity to be generous. There's another side though, and I want to talk about this today a little bit. We could stay there in that zone of gratitude and thankfulness, but there's another real thing out there, and it's bitterness. And
Mm,
I'd like to talk about that today and kind of dive in through the podcast on bitterness and how we can overcome bitterness. And I know you and I have shared some experiences over the course of our career and even in our marriages that bitterness can raise its head, and it's an ugly thing. And I want to tell a quick story to kind of open what we want to talk about. But years ago, I was a pretty young man, and I needed to do this real estate deal, and I was really banking on it. So I went and bought this condo here in Nashville, and I rented it out for about 5 years. And came time to sell it, and so I sold it. And there was a very astute businessman here in Nashville that I just happened to have a common acquaintance with, and I wanted to sell it. He said, "I know this guy. We'll call him John." For this for these purposes, but I called John and I said, "Hey, got this condo. It's out on the south side of Nashville, and I wanted to sell it. I understand you buy property out there." He goes, "Oh yeah, I'd love to." And so I met with him. We negotiated a deal, agreed to it, gave me earnest money, went to the closing table. Well, when we went to the closing table, there were an attorney there, and there was a banker there, and there was his spouse and him and myself. And so I went in to sign the papers, and his attorney said, "Hey, uh, back on page like 23, down about H or I," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" It's like, well, I don't even never even seen this document.
you're in trouble when an attorney says
Yeah,
that, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you
I
know
knew, I
something's
knew.
gonna
Then
happen.
buckle
It
up.
probably isn't on your favor.
Yeah, and so he said, because of this and this, he doesn't have to pay you X. And I said, "Well, I thought that was in our agreement." He said, "Well, it was a handshake agreement, but the legal documents specify that this is what's going to take place." And at the end of the day, it cost me $41,000. And
Mm.
I was a young guy. Like, I really needed that money. I was counting on that money. And here's what got me, though. So I'm going to set the stage. This is kind of a lengthy story, but I think it's worth the time. Hopefully, you'll be patient with me listening. And so he sat back in the chair and laughed. He laughed out
Mm.
loud, humiliated me in front of my attorney, the bank that was there, the closing, the attorney that closes the property, and he pointed at me. He pointed at me and he laughed and he said, "Gotcha, big guy, gotcha." And something broke in me at that moment. Something happened in me that I really can't explain. And I just said, "Okay." So I signed the papers, and he got the deal, and it cost me $41,000. So for the next 2 years, I was enraged. I thought about that every day. Uh, I was bitter. Now, on the other side of that, I'm like a Sunday school teacher at our church. I'm a deacon at our church. I own a business and got 2 kids, and I'm trying to lead them properly. And this bitterness is killing me. So 2 years go by. Bob Willis, a friend of mine, calls me and invites me to go on a 2-week hunt in Buffalo, Wyoming. He said, "There's 16 of us going. Would you like to go?" And I said, "Man, I've always wanted to go out there and hunt antelope and mule deer." I said, "Yeah, that'd be great." He said, "Well, here's where we're going to meet. Send your money in. This is what it's going to cost, and meet at this truck stop." It was a place for all 16 people to meet. Have Robin bring you. You don't need to leave your truck there. So I met him there. And then we're going to Buffalo, Wyoming from Nashville, Tennessee, right? It's a long drive. It's like a couple thousand miles out there. And so we get there and I kiss Robin. I get my gun out. I get my, luggage out, and Robin pulls off. And when she pulls off, I turn around. And when I turned around, John was standing there.
No.
John was a mutual friend that invited me, and I had no idea he was going on the trip.
Mm.
And I walk up to my buddy Bob and I said, "Bob, seriously? Like, he's here?" And he said, "What?" He didn't even know. He said, "What are you talking about?" And I told him the story. He goes, "Oh, this is going to be interesting." So John and I look at each other. We never speak. We go to Buffalo, Wyoming. Now, I'm going to tell something I think I've only told twice in the past 10 years of doing interviews and being a podcast guest. But there again, I think it's relevant, related to how serious bitterness can cripple you. So we scout on Johnny Ziza's properties, owns a farm there, 67,000 acre farm. So we go there, we're hunting. First 2 days we're scouting. First day of opening season for mule deer and antelope, I'm sitting on the top of this hill, beautiful, real picturesque place. And I'm scoping with my binoculars, looking out across the bottom. And I'm by myself. Everybody's got their own place. 16 people on 67,000 acres. You got plenty of land out there to
Plenty
hunt,
of
right?
room.
Miles and miles of road frontage. And so I'm scoping the bottom out and I see something move and I look down there and it's a long way off, but it's got an orange vest on, which hunters out there have to wear an orange vest. And then I zoom in with my binoculars and I look and it's John. And I'm like, "You've got to be kidding." Like, the guy that I hate the most on the planet is in front of me right now. And here's what I'm going to tell that I'm embarrassed about. I thought about shooting him. I know that's terrible. But I literally thought about shooting him. I had a hold to my rifle. I'll brag for a second. I'm a really good shot. Like, I've been hunting my whole life. And I actually thought about shooting him. And then I thought, what am I doing? Like, I started sweating. It was cold outside. I started sweating. I was
Mm.
so nervous. I tease about it now and I say the only reason I didn't, he had an orange vest on. I don't know how I would have gotten away with shooting somebody accidentally with an orange vest on. And at that moment, something happened to me as well. I had to get control of this. So we hunted for the next 10 days, still hadn't spoke. We're together for 2 weeks. We still hadn't spoke. We get in the car and we drive home. I'm not in his car. I'm in another car. We have these K5 Blazers that we're driving out there. And we get 60 miles from home and John's K5 Blazer breaks down on the side of the interstate. All four vehicles stop. We get out, and I don't know why. I have no idea why I chose that moment, but I walked up to him and I said, "Hey, John, I know we've had a rough time, but if you'll get one of your buddies to take me back to my house, we're only 60 miles away. I've got a Bronco there that you can borrow until you get yours fixed." And he looks at me like I hit him with a sack of nickels. I mean, he's just like, "What in the world?" He said, "Okay." So we get to my house. I get out of the car. He gets out of his buddy's car, and I hand him the keys. And he goes, "Man, I'm going to pay you that money back." And I said, I don't want the money. This ain't about the money." He goes, "I don't understand." I said, "This ain't even about you. Like, you don't deserve for me to forgive you. You screwed me out of $41,000. I'm doing this for me because I've been captive. I've been the prisoner. I've allowed this to disrupt my entire life. I'm not doing this for you other than showing a sense of gratitude and appreciation to allow me to be released." He didn't pay me the money. He did use my truck for a couple of weeks, got his fix, and brought mine back. And he thanked me and he left, and I haven't seen him since. But Kevin, it set me free. It
Mm,
allowed me to forgive somebody that had done me wrong. There's multiple stories I could tell, but I thought that would be a good story to kind of start this episode.
yeah, wow. What There's a lot baked in there. First of all, I'm glad you didn't pull the trigger. So
He is too.
glad God had a hold of your heart at that
You're
moment, that you
right.
thought
You're
of the
right.
bigger picture. And because I mean, honestly, right? Like, live in a world
Yeah,
where
sure.
when you're faced with that moment,
Yeah. It's
man, it's a
crazy.
split
It's
second decision,
crazy
isn't
how
it?
our thinking can go so south, right? We do
Hmm.
dumb things. We do such stupid things, and we have these irrational thoughts. And
Hmm.
thank you. I'm glad I didn't as well.
Yeah. Why do you think? I mean, obviously, there's situations like this that happen, right? And that one, you could say it was. I mean, maybe even being out of control is a reason why we become bitter. But why do you think men specifically, um, in the situations that we find ourselves in, why do we become bitter? Why'd you become bitter about that?
Yeah, well, he took advantage of me. He disrespected me, right?
Mm.
There's a, I think it would even been differently had it been privately, and he just said, "Hey, you need to pay attention to the details, and maybe you'll learn next time."
Yeah, yeah, but let me challenge you on it for a second on that. Like, yeah, you felt disrespected, but I can feel disrespected. You can feel disrespected and not take on a an attitude or a character of bitterness. It doesn't have to go that far.
No, it
So
doesn't.
what
But
was it that made it go that far?
yeah,
That might have been a symptom, but it
sure.
wasn't the thing that made it.
Sure, sure. I think there was a lot of things wrapped up in that. First of all, I had expectations for it to be one way, and it wasn't. I was hugely disappointed, which is another thing that happened. I
Did you feel
considered it
betrayed?
betrayal. Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
Yeah, 100%. Because I knew the guy distantly. I didn't know him intimately, but I knew him
yeah,
distantly. And if I called his name, many people on this podcast would know who it is. He owns a large company here in Nashville, and
yeah.
very prominent family here. And I was like, really? I mean, this is how you got this wealth? This is how you've grown your business? And there's coupled feelings there. But yeah, so I think it was a failure, like from my vantage point, because I didn't do my due diligence and really research it. So I was embarrassed. I was disappointed. I felt betrayed. I felt all those emotions.
Mm,
Here's the thing, when those expectations are not met, it leads to these feelings of disappointment and frustration, and I think it happens in a lot of arenas. I think it happens professionally, like we've been talking about, but I think also it can happen physically, like we let ourselves go oftentimes. I know last year I really went on a journey to try to get physically fit and put a lot of pressure on myself. Another place that we don't talk about bitterness and how it can manifest even in our marriages is
mm.
sexual intimacy. I mean, it's a real important part of our marriage. And, we're built differently, right? Guys are different than girls, and we look at it differently oftentimes. And it's hard to get on the same page sometimes. And we become resentful, and that can turn into bitterness. Um, the thing for me, Wally, is that I put huge pressure on myself, right, to perform, to do it right. And then when it happens the other way, I feel like other people see it as a failure also. And I feel like maybe others are disappointed. And that bitterness just wells up within you. And you mentioned betrayal a while ago. When men feel betrayed by somebody that they really trust, it does lead to these feelings of bitterness, and you know well as I do that in a lot of the local churches today, we see a lot of this. People feel they've been betrayed, or they feel a sense of bitterness. They feel like that because of somebody they admired had a moral failure, and then they totally discount their spirituality and say if that's the way that a person of that faith is going to behave, they feel a sense of betrayal, and then they become bitterness, show this sense of bitterness to the whole faith that they're involved in. And
Mhm.
so it just plays havoc on our mindset when people betray us. That's another reason it's so important that we do the right things, right? We man up,
Yeah,
we make good decisions because other people are watching you.
yeah,
And I teach oftentimes that other people see you differently than you see yourself. And we've got to be real careful at
yeah.
how
I
we're
know
portrayed.
I know in my life, like, that idea of I think there's been bitterness different times in my life that has set in, probably mostly around being rejected.
Mm,
That could be in my marriage. We talked about sexual intimacy and you know, reality is my wife and I've been married almost 30 years, be 30 years in May, which is pretty cool. And I know you got a few years on me, but I'm happy to hit 30. So
yeah, well, I got a few years on you age wise.
I know,
So
right?
that makes a difference
Uh,
too, right?
Yeah, but we've had those challenges in our marriage at different times,
Sure.
and for sure, that feelings of not being enough and feeling rejected
Mm.
is played into that, and those you know feelings of bitterness
Yeah. Was it
set in
hard
at
to
different
talk about
times.
those things for you in your marriage early on, right? You're
Early
trying to
on, it
figure it
still
out.
is.
Yeah,
We're still. I mean, that's honestly right. We're
yeah,
still
yeah,
working through it. I mean,
sure,
after 30 years, we're much more free in our
yeah,
conversation and
sure,
communication, and we've had help along the way through
right,
counseling and
right,
being around people that encourage us and challenge us. But yeah, so in our marriage, in my marriage, that bitterness set in really around that idea of rejection and not
yeah.
feeling like I was enough.
Yeah, you feel inadequate.
Yeah, in business, for me, probably the most recent example was I had a business that I started. And I don't want to tell the whole story here today. It'd be great to do that sometime. I think it's an interesting story about partnerships and how I missed it in the beginning and didn't have help along the way. But at the end of the day, I had a partner in a business that I built for. I was a majority owner and built it up over 18 years, and had an opportunity to sell in 2019, and I had some real challenges with this partner. He's a good guy. I mean, I'm just going to say it. He's a good guy, fun to be around. Um, he's a good guy. But there was some challenges in our partnership and our expectations and our personalities were very different. We worked remotely. We ran the business remotely, so that created some distance. I think there was some challenges there. But when we got to the end of the thing, and all was said and done, and we're talking about high seven figure sale. And so it was considerable the amount of economics involved in that for both of us. And so we walk away from that, and I've got these feelings already of like, okay, I'm finally done. And I was able to, in the new company that bought us, I was able to transition him out pretty quickly, and so I was happy about that. But it wasn't but a few months after that, we were finally finishing up some tax things and whatnot with to close out the actual business side of things that we had had. And I get this email, and it's like, I think it says something like, "Hey, Kevin, before we kind of close the books on everything, I think it would be equitable that if we look back at 2009, there was a time where I thought you took some expenses that were more personal in nature and not business in nature. And I'd like to be compensated for that." And it was $3,000, which meant that his percentage was less than 1,500 of that. When I read the word equitable, I about hit the stinking ceiling because of all the frustrations that I had had in the business of opportunities that I felt we missed because of his lack of leadership. Um, And yet I can say all of that and people listening go, yeah, but you had a high seven-figure exit. Come on, what are you talking about? Well, you're in this game of business, man. Like it's real. You know, when you're making $1 million a year in revenue, that's your top line revenue. Uh 950 versus a million matters. That's 50 grand when you know, so it's all on scale,
Sure.
right? So it all matters. It matters to the people that you have on your team, the benefits you can provide to them, all those things. It all matters. Um, but man, when I read that word equitable, I about came out of my chair. And then the thing that between equitable and the thing that mattered, the thing that got me, and that you said that moment where you were like, oh my gosh, I just want to,
Yeah.
it was that moment where, because I knew him so well, I realized that he didn't even think that that $3,000 that he was only going to get less than 1,500. In his mind, he was thinking $3,000. And I'm like, he doesn't even know. He doesn't even know. And you know what I did? I got counsel. I asked my peer advisory group, my ISI mastermind guys. I talked to obviously my wife, and you and I settled on. I'm not proud of this. I settled on. I didn't care what it took. If he was gonna take go to court for me over $3,000 or $1,500, if I had to pay $20,000 with for a lawyer to help me resolve this thing and not pay him a dime, I was going to do it. And so for the next 3 or 4 months, I was miserable. I was
Hey, I
not
want to
fun to be
highlight
around.
that you went against the counsel of your group.
I did. I
I don't
totally
want to throw
did.
you
And
under the
I made
bus
the
here, but
statement. I was like, I don't care.
yeah,
I don't care. Like, I'm not going to let this guy
yeah.
get this last thing. I'm not going to let this guy get this thing over on me. And golly, like 3 or 4 months of just being miserable, probably about, I don't know,
It cost you
five
how
to eight
much?
thousand dollars
How
in
much did?
lawyer fees.
Wait a minute, we can't miss this here. How much did it cost you in fees?
Yeah, about $5,000 to $8,000 in
Yeah.
lawyer fees.
Okay.
And then the end of the day, I think I paid him like, I don't know what it was, 1,500 bucks or something, or just under $1,500. And oh my gosh,
So you
like,
spent the lawyer fees, and you still ended up giving him the
yep,
1,500.
yeah, because it just wasn't. At the end of the day, he wasn't gonna, when he would like, he was never gonna take me to court over it.
Here's the thing you said a while ago, though, that's really important, and I think we need to touch on is that unresolved anger. Like you were miserable. You were not
I
fun
was.
to be around. I'll just be honest
Mm-mm.
with you. You weren't fun to be around for those months that you were dealing with this. You were in a
No.
sour mood. You had a little chip on your shoulder. You were angry. You know, I would suspect you and Sonia didn't get along real well during that time because you're so angry.
She
See,
was tired of me, man. She's
listen,
like,
this
I'm tired of this conversation.
yeah, yeah. Here's the thing is that I went 2 years with
Mm.
that kind of bitterness until I did something to set myself free and say, we have to choose, right? We can either stay there. And many of you listening to us today, you're right there. You've got similar stories that are in parallel with what Wally and I are sharing. I don't know what it is, I don't know the magnitude, but man, you've got to resolve these anger issues. You got to identify them because if you don't, I promise you, you're going to be in a sense of uh, despair. It's going to stifle your creativity. It's going to make you not fun to be around. You're going to miss opportunities. And at the end of the day, man, it's just the right thing to do to address these. So,
Yeah.
what do you think are some ways that we could share that maybe they could even prevent bitterness? Like, hey, let's
Mm.
not even let me go there. Like, hopefully, I'll never get there. Maybe you haven't got a story like mine or Wally's, or maybe you do. But how can we prevent bitterness?
Yeah. Man, I think first and foremost, I'm a person of faith and Christian faith. So I know that even in that situation I just explained and walked through with you, and I know for you too, that that you know God was working on you,
Mm,
right? That entire time we may not have been listening.
right.
We may have been completely ignoring it, like I was. I went against counsel, even human counsel, and and so I think being a person of faith and just even in those moments of when we know there's some bitterness that we have in our
Mm.
heart, like keep going back to our faith, going back to scripture, keeping ourselves in front of people, right? Because even though I made that decision, part of the journey of making the decision to say, you know what, at the end of the day, what matters most is my testimony. And it matters to my wife, it matters to my children, what they perceive, what they see. It matters to the guys in my mastermind group
Yeah.
because they're counting on me
Mm.
to give them to give them counsel, to give them encouragement, to challenge them. And so that I think those are a couple of things
You
for
know,
me. What
here's
about
the
you?
thing. These guys, a lot of guys maybe not even tell you, but they respect you and they pattern their life after what you're doing. And we can say audibly anything that we want, but people are
Mm,
watching our actions. It's the same way with our kids. We can say, yeah, you're most important, but we're sending all these emails and working after hours, and little Bobby wants to pitch ball in the backyard, or little Susie wants to play with her dolls. And you can say you're most important, you can say those things, but they don't interpret your words, they interpret your actions.
yeah.
And so I think it's really important to continue to practice that forgiveness and practice doing it. But the thing that you've been very instrumental in helping me on this in particular is really focusing on gratitude.
Mm,
I was in a funk a few months back and I couldn't get out of it. You know, there's been a lot of personal issues going on health wise in our family. And it had me down. Like I was low. And I don't get low often, but I was in a spot. And Kevin and I do a one on one meeting every single week. And there's pointed questions that we have to answer to each other for each other. And then we write kind of a mini dissertation about our week, what's going on, what we're thinking. And I was going to unload on that thing. I was going to just give him an earful of all the things that I was going through. And then I thought that's not going to do anything beneficial. So I sat in my sunroom, took my laptop, and I made a list of about 50 things that I'm grateful for. And I said, Lord, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be able to help these family members that are struggling in their health consequent the problems that they're having currently, and like thank you for giving me this place to live. I started naming all the stuff, and when I
mm,
left, when I got up an hour later, I was different. And I think that if we do that more, it will eliminate the bitterness from our lives, right? Is not focus on the things you don't have, not focus on the things that have been done to you, that victim mindset. Focus on the things that are good. Focus on the things that you're grateful for. And it's just so nurturing to our souls in order to
mm.
be able to do that. So, yeah, thank you, Wally, for being a source of an instructor and a teacher and keeping that at the forefront of your mind. That's instrumental to me. So, thank you.
Yeah, same back at you. I think as you're talking through that, I was thinking of some other things as well. Um, practicing self-care. And a lot of times as guys, especially, it's easy to think of self-care as something that's weak. And the reality is that there's a lot of types of self-care. And, it seems like a frou-frou word, if you will.
Right.
But really it's about being a good steward
Mm,
of your body.
mm.
And your body consists of, three areas. It consists of your heart, your soul, and your actual physical being. And so, taking care of ourselves physically, I think is really, really important.
I struggle with that one. I'm just being honest. It's difficult for me because I didn't come from an athletic family. I don't think I've ever seen my mom sweat a day in her life. She's 88 now. You know, my dad worked hard physically. If I were to mention to him, let's go out and run, he would like hit me edgeways with a boat paddle. He was like, you're crazy. There's no way I'm going to do this. So, and my brothers and sister weren't athletic. And so I was never around a lot of physical activity. I worked my whole life, since I was 8 years old. And
Sure.
so this is, as a 62-year-old now, this is a real challenge for me. And I even had to hire a coach to hold me accountable. I don't necessarily need him to tell me what to do because he's shown me for 2 years now, but I need to know that I've got skin in the game. He's going to be looking for me and I've got to go because half the time I wouldn't go. So, whatever you need to do that self care, like think through it, get an accountability partner, hire a coach, get somebody around you that can call you out on that. One of the things too I was thinking about is we put such high expectations on ourselves to accomplish things. And I think a lot of the goals that we set are unrealistic, and that can lead to disappointment, which can then create bitterness
Mm,
because we've done. I know a lot of you are familiar with Dave Ramsey Solutions and what they do, and they have a thing called the snowball. And financially, you could argue he teaches wrong because he doesn't teach to pay off the highest interest rate first. He teaches to pay off the small debt first. And the reason he does that is so that you can get an early win, so that you can gain momentum. And then you start believing in yourself. So set hairy, audacious goals, have aspirations that you can really go for it, but also set some benchmarks early on that allow you to have a win.
that's good. Well, Big A, there's probably some guys listening today that like us, whether it's work, whether it's in the ministry at church that they're involved in, maybe it's their family, maybe it's their spouse, maybe it's a dad, maybe it's a brother. I know you've had that in your life. Um, what what are some things as we finish up here? Just kind of can you kind of summarize?
Mm,
If I've got that, if I'm honest with myself, that okay, I've got the situation where
right,
I'm either approaching bitterness,
right.
like it's coming, I can feel it,
Sure,
or I'm in it knee
sure,
deep
sure.
right now.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
what are some takeaways?
Yeah,
Like,
that's
okay, what's
good. I
next?
think there's a list of things that you need to do, right? You need to think through these. One of them is identify the source of your bitterness. Like identify, be honest with yourself. I coach a lot of guys, and one of my favorite questions is what do you know that you're lying to yourself about? And so I
Mm,
think you've got to be gut level honest. And I don't know why this is the case for me. I can't do that on paper. I can't do that on my computer, but I've got whiteboards, out in my office and in my garage that I can stand up. And when I can stand there and write on it, it allows me to be honest for whatever reason. So I don't know what it is for you, but find a place that you can identify the source of your bitterness and then practice self reflection. Really look at yourself, do inter reflection, and say, hey, how am I? What am I doing maybe to cause some of this? We've talked at length about practicing forgiveness. It's not an easy thing for a lot of people, especially men, quite honestly. They want to be that alpha male. They want to say, I got this. Nobody's going to tell me what to do. And they feel like it's kind of the soft thing to do to go and show people that, hey, I forgive you. I understand where you're at. One of the things for me that we've got to do is practice self compassion. This is a place that's not good because I don't give myself much grace. My number two core values, no excuses. And I'm like, hey, there's no excuse. Like, let's get after it. But at the same time, I think we need some of that. And then finally, Kevin, I just want to mention that it's hard to do it by yourself. Quite honestly, I think you've got to seek counsel. You've got to get guys around you, whatever that looks like. We get to experience it. You and I do, and we have for a decade now in Iron Sharpens Iron Mastermind. We have support. We have guys that we're able to share with weekly. Then we meet in person, and go over things together. So we've built that tribe. We've built people around you, but we may be talking to some people today that feel lonely. They feel isolated. They feel like I don't have anybody. And it can be a family member, it can be a trusted friend, it can be another professional, it can be a mastermind group, a board of directors, peer advisory group. I don't know. I don't know who it is for you, right? Select whatever's good for you. But you've got to have people around you. God designed us to be in community. He didn't design us to be in isolation. And so I want to encourage you today to think through bitterness, what that looks like for you. Practice these things that we've just gone over. And man, if there's any, Wally, can you recommend any sources or places that they could go or any kind of resources that might be beneficial for them?
yeah, I mean, I think if they're in the depths, the throes of bitterness, and they're waking up every morning, it's all they think about when they wake up. It's all they think about when they go to bed. It's consuming their time, their energy, their relationships are suffering. If they're in the deep throes of it right now, I would suggest finding some counseling, some professional counseling to help you walk through that. And we obviously have counselors inside of ISI. Happy, if you guys reach out to us, we can connect you with some folks that are business minded, family first, faith forward folks.
Yeah.
And so they get you right? As a business owner trying to sort through all this stuff and all the pieces that are connected with that. So be happy to do that from ISI. So you can reach out to us. Just email us at pod at viewfromthetop.com. We're happy to help you out there. And then selfishly, you mentioned, 10 years. ISI has been around for 10 years. And I was looking at this the other day. It'll be 7 years coming up in October,
Mm,
which is crazy
goes
to
quick.
think. And I had a guy ask me the other day, like, what would it be? What do you think would be different in your life if you hadn't discovered, something like ISI? I was just like, oh, I started thinking back through, family and business and financially, and even from my faith perspective, all those things. And I just created a little list, and I was like, dang, like it would be quite different. And so, yeah, I encourage you guys, man, look up. You can easily check out Iron Sharpens Iron. You can go to viewfromthetop.com. Just click on the learn more about masterminds. It's right there. And there's some resources there. You can download, the what do I want document, kind of helps you get started thinking through maybe what you don't, some questions around to get you thinking, right? So I'd start there. There's a couple different ways that if you're deep in the throes, or you want to be prepared for next time when those feelings creep up. Check out those resources.
Wally, fun hanging out today, buddy. Let's get after it. Have a good one.
Yeah, that was great. All right. Hey, thanks everybody for hanging out with us today. We're so happy that you joined us. And like we mentioned, the end of the podcast there, feel free to reach out to us at pod@viewfromthetop.com, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you have. We'd love to hear from you. If you like the episode, let us know. And if you didn't, let us know. And we definitely want to keep bringing content that's relevant to you all as you're making your way up the mountain, as you're climbing up the mountain to get your own view from the top. We'll see you next time.